What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses comes face to face with a late-night host seemingly more interested in provocation than conversation? What happens when the usual gloss of celebrity interviews fades and the encounter turns into something far more personal? Tonight we're unpacking one of the most uncomfortable and unforgettable moments in late-night TV history. A night when Jennifer Connelly, long admired for her elegance and professionalism, reached her breaking point live on Jimmy Kimmel Live. If you're a fan of celebrity showdowns and unscripted moments that reveal the truth behind the cameras, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments which interview moment shocked you the most. Now, let's dive into what really happened that night. Jennifer Connelly was booked for what should have been a standard promotional appearance. She was there to talk about her new psychological thriller, a project already generating Oscar buzz. Dressed in classic black and flashing the mysterious smile that's made her a fixture in Hollywood for decades, she took the stage with grace. But the tone shifted almost immediately. Jimmy Kimmel, known for his sardonic wit and tongue-in-cheek interviews, seemed to have a different agenda this time. "Jennifer Connelly, everybody," he said as she sat down. But there was something in his voice, an undercurrent of sarcasm that wasn't lost on attentive viewers. "So, Jennifer," he began, leaning forward with that infamous smirk, "there's been a lot of talk lately about actors who take themselves really seriously. You know the ones. Every role is like saving the world. That sound familiar?" Jennifer's smile flickered. It was subtle, barely a shift. But for those who knew her, it was a warning sign. This wasn't the conversation she was expecting. She'd come prepared to discuss character development, production stories, maybe a few family anecdotes, not to be cast as the poster child for pretentious actors. "I'm not sure I understand the question," she said calmly. "Are you asking about my approach to acting?" "Well, let's put it this way," Jimmy continued, settling back into his chair. "You've done A Beautiful Mind, Requiem for a Dream, now this new one. Do you ever just want to have fun? Make a movie where you're not crying or losing your mind?" The audience chuckled, but it wasn't the usual laughter. It was hesitant, uneasy. Jennifer sat up straighter. "I choose projects based on the story and the character," she replied, her voice still steady. "If those stories happen to be serious or emotionally intense, that doesn't mean they're not worth telling. I've done lighter roles too, but I don't think depth and entertainment are mutually exclusive." Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "But be honest with us. When a script isn't about addiction, trauma, or some big human struggle, do you just toss it aside?" That's when the temperature in the room changed. The audience fell silent. Jennifer's jaw tightened. "That's not how I approach my career at all," she said, her tone firmer now. "And frankly, that's an unfair characterization. Not just of me, but of the work many actors do. These stories matter. They reflect the human experience." Jimmy made air quotes with his fingers. "Human experience," he said mockingly. "See, that's what I mean. Everything has to be so meaningful now. Can't a movie just be fun? Can't people just escape for a couple hours?" Jennifer took a long breath. "Yes, sometimes people want to escape. But escape doesn't have to mean empty. Great films can do both. They can entertain and still say something worth saying. Audiences are smart. They can handle that. But Kimmel wouldn't let up. See, you always assume audiences want to be challenged. But what if they don't? What if they just want to turn off their brains and watch something dumb and fun? The interview had clearly veered off course. What should have been a discussion about film had morphed into a thinly veiled interrogation. And Jennifer Connelly, ever the professional, had been put in the hot seat. "I think you're creating a false choice," she said sharply. "And you're underestimating your own viewers. They don't need everything dumbed down to enjoy it." Jimmy smiled again, this time colder. "So now it's about dumbing down content? That's exactly what I'm talking about. You can't even admit that sometimes people just want popcorn and explosions without implying it's beneath you." Jennifer didn't flinch, but her eyes narrowed. You could feel the tension radiating off the stage. What followed was a silent standoff, the kind of moment that makes live television so unpredictable. A line had been crossed, and everyone in that studio knew it. Some audience members applauded her restraint. Others looked visibly uncomfortable. By the time the segment cut to commercial, the damage had already been done. The clip would be replayed millions of times across social media, sparking heated debates. Was Jennifer right to defend the value of meaningful storytelling? Or was Kimmel simply playing devil's advocate, gone too far? You decide. "That's not what I said," Jennifer snapped, her calm exterior beginning to crack. "You're twisting my words, Jimmy. You asked me about my film choices and I answered honestly. But now you're implying I look down on other kinds of movies, or on other actors, and that's simply not true." The studio fell into a thick, uneasy silence. This was no longer the light, rehearsed exchange viewers were used to. This was real, a raw, unscripted collision playing out live. Jimmy leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "All right, let's try another angle. Your new film, the thriller everyone's buzzing about. Your character. She's another emotionally wrecked woman, right? Another excuse to show off those dramatic chops." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "She's a complex character, yes. She's dealing with trauma. But she's also resilient, smart, and she cries a lot." Jimmy cut in, grinning. "Be honest. How many close-ups of you crying made the final cut? 5? 10? The question was so dismissive, so reductive, that a chill ran through the room. He wasn't critiquing her performance. He was mocking the very essence of it. Jennifer stared at him, unmoving, as if taking one final internal breath before stepping across a line. "You know what, Jimmy?" she said, her voice now low and sharp as a blade. "We need to stop pretending this is about acting, because it's not. This feels personal, and I'd really like to know why." Jimmy laughed, a short, cold sound. "Personal? Come on. This is just a conversation. I'm asking the questions people want answered. You're the one getting defensive." "Defensive?" she echoed, her voice now brimming with fury. "You've spent the last 10 minutes implying I'm pretentious, belittling the work I do, and reducing years of performance to crying on camera. If that's not personal, what is?" The crowd remained frozen, sensing the weight of what they were witnessing. Something raw and potentially career-altering. "Look," Jimmy said, raising his hands in faux diplomacy. "I'm just saying, Hollywood's full of actors who take themselves too seriously. People appreciate when someone calls it out." Jennifer leaned in now, not backing down an inch. "Calls out what, exactly?" "My dedication. The stories I choose to help tell. The belief that audiences deserve more than disposable fluff. Which one of those things offends you so much?" Jimmy's smirk faded. His tone sharpened. "What bothers me," he said, the smile finally dropping from his face, "is actors pretending they're changing the world. You're not saving lives, Jennifer. You're in the entertainment business, not the enlightenment business." The words landed like a punch. Jennifer visibly recoiled, just for a moment. "Wow," she whispered, shaking her head slowly. "So to you, caring about the impact of your work is arrogance? In your world, meaning and entertainment can't coexist? If we care, we've forgotten our place?" Jimmy leaned back. "Maybe, just maybe, you'd be easier to relate to if you were a little less self-important." And with that, the mask was gone, on both sides. No more performance, no more pleasantries. Just two people on opposite sides of a cultural fault line, surrounded by millions of eyes. "Maybe you could admit," Jimmy fired back, "that not every film has to be a grand statement about the human condition. Sometimes a job is just a job." Jennifer stood up abruptly. The sound of her chair scraping back cut through the studio like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled through the audience. The band stopped mid-riff. Even Jimmy looked caught off guard, blinking up at her as if he hadn't expected to provoke such a reaction. "A job is just a job," she repeated, her voice sharp and resonant in the stunned quiet. "Do you have any idea what it's like to be a woman in this industry, Jimmy? Any idea at all? Do you understand what it means when a script finally comes along that doesn't relegate you to the girlfriend, the wife, the victim?" Jimmy shifted uncomfortably, trying to recover his footing. But Jennifer was already in motion, her anger giving way to something deeper, something raw. "You sit behind that desk every night," she continued, her voice steadier now, each word weighted with meaning. "And you make your jokes. You poke fun at everyone and everything. That's your job, and you're good at it. But don't you dare mock me for caring about mine." She stepped closer to his desk, and instinctively Jimmy leaned back. The entire dynamic in the room had changed, and everyone could feel it. "Don't you dare reduce the work I love, the work that's defined my life, to some punchline about self-importance." The cameras were still rolling, capturing a moment that was already burning itself into the history of live television. Jimmy, sensing the magnitude of what he'd set in motion, tried to pivot. "Jennifer, I think maybe we're both getting a little heated. Let's just take a moment." "No," she cut in, her voice sharp as a blade. "We're not going to take a breath. We're not going to pretend this didn't happen. You wanted honesty? Let's have it." Her eyes locked onto his, unwavering. "You want to know what I think?" she asked. "I think you're threatened by actors who give a damn, because it reminds you how hollow your version of entertainment really is. You've built your whole persona around mockery and cynicism, and when someone comes along who believes in the power of storytelling, you recoil." Jimmy paled. His usual smirk had vanished. I don't think that's fair." Jennifer let out a mirthless laugh. "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" she said, incredulous. "Is it fair to invite someone onto your show just to tear them down? Is it fair to belittle an actor's choices just because they don't fit into your jaded little worldview?" The studio was silent. Even the crew, seasoned professionals who'd seen 1,000 interviews, stood frozen. Jimmy opened his mouth again, desperate to regain control. "Look, Jennifer, maybe I came on a little strong. I was just trying to... You were trying to humiliate me." Her voice was quiet now, dangerously quiet, and in that stillness, her words landed harder than any shout ever could. "For reasons I'll never understand, you decided tonight was the night to take me down a peg. Well, congratulations. You've shown your audience exactly who you are." Jimmy sat in stunned silence, the weight of her words pressing down like stone. He seemed to realize, perhaps too late, that there was no salvaging this moment. Jennifer stepped back from the desk. The simple movement seemed to expand her presence. She was no longer the guest. She was the one commanding the room. "You know what the saddest part is?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper but clear as crystal in the quiet. "I came here excited. I came here proud of the work I've done, ready to share something meaningful with your audience. Instead, you turned it into a performance of cruelty." She turned finally toward the nearest camera. "To anyone watching who still believes that stories matter, that entertainment can have meaning, that actors are more than just faces reading, lines. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone convince you that caring is something to be mocked." Then she faced Jimmy one last time. "And you, Jimmy, I hope someday you remember what it feels like to care. Because this cynical, mean-spirited version of comedy you've embraced, it's not just hurting your guests. It's eating away at you too." She held his gaze for a moment longer, then walked off stage, leaving behind a silence so total it rang louder than any applause. "It's hurting you too." The words landed with the weight of a gavel, final, inescapable. Jennifer stood there motionless, giving Jimmy one last, silent opportunity to redeem himself with something, anything, that might salvage the wreckage. But Jimmy said nothing. His expression was frozen somewhere between confusion and shame, the mask of a late-night host crumbling under the reality of what had just occurred. Jennifer gave a small, knowing nod. His silence told her everything. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, she reached for her microphone. The sound of the clip unfastening echoed unnaturally loud in the quiet studio. That soft click, that tiny, almost insignificant sound felt louder than any on-air argument ever could. Jimmy finally found his voice, but it emerged hoarse, fragile. "Jennifer, please, let's just what?" She cut in, holding the microphone like a piece of evidence. "Go back to the scripted fluff, my diet, my skincare routine. Is that the interview you want to salvage here?" She placed the mic gently on his desk, careful, precise. Not tossed, not flung, placed. The finality in the gesture was undeniable. "You said actors take themselves too seriously," she continued, her voice calm but resolute. "And you're right. About one thing. I do take my work seriously, because it matters to me. It's given my life meaning. It's allowed me to connect with people I'll never meet, in ways that nothing else could." Jimmy tried to interject again, but she lifted her hand. Just once. It was enough. He stopped. "What I don't understand," she pressed on, her voice gaining strength, "is why that threatens you so much. Why does my passion make you so uncomfortable? So uncomfortable that you spent 20 minutes trying to reduce it to a punchline. The cameras were still rolling. Every flicker of emotion, every shift in tone, every word was being immortalized. The audience sat frozen, some in disbelief, some in awe, unsure whether to applaud, gasp, or hold their breath until this modern reckoning ran its course, I think," she said slowly, as if discovering the truth in real time. "You're angry because you've forgotten how to care. You've spent so long making fun of everything that you no longer remember what it's like to believe in something. And when someone comes along who still believes, it reminds you of what you gave up." Jimmy's face turned ghostly. His hands clutched the desk, trembling slightly. Whatever reaction he had expected when he mocked Jennifer Connelly, this wasn't it. This was not a rebuttal. This was an autopsy of his own artistic decay. "So no," she said, stepping toward the exit. I'm not going to sit here and let you project your cynicism onto me. I won't apologize for caring about my work, and I won't pretend this was some harmless back and forth." She paused at the edge of the stage, turning back one last time. Her voice softened, but the power behind it only grew. "Jimmy, I hope you figure out whatever it is that made you think tonight was okay. Because this wasn't comedy. This wasn't entertainment. This was cruel. And you're better than that, at least. I hope you are." The silence in the studio was now absolute, so heavy it felt physical. Jimmy sat stiffly, mouth slightly agape, as if still searching for a response that simply wouldn't come. Jennifer walked toward the backstage. Exit with grace, but something had changed. She seemed taller now, stronger. The veneer of Hollywood polish stripped away, revealing something harder beneath: conviction. Just before disappearing behind the curtain, she turned and looked directly into the main. "Camera." "To anyone who has ever been told that caring too much is a weakness," she said, voice steady and clear. "Don't believe it. The world needs people who care. People who believe what they do matters. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise." And with that, Jennifer Connelly walked off the Jimmy Kimmel live stage, leaving behind a host who looked like he'd been blindsided by truth itself, and an audience unsure whether to applaud, cry, or simply process what they'd just witnessed. Jimmy sat in stunned silence for what felt like forever, but was probably less than 15 seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, hollow. We'll be right back, after these messages." The feed cut, but not before one final shot. Jimmy Kimmel, hunched behind his desk, looking like a man who had just realized his own jokes weren't funny anymore. He thought he was going to poke fun at a serious actress. Instead, he got a masterclass in grace, integrity, and the raw power of standing your ground. The confrontation between Jennifer Connelly and Jimmy Kimmel became instant legend, not because of the spectacle, but because it revealed something bigger about the industry, about the cost of cynicism, and about what happens when someone finally says, "Enough."